Happy to.
All right, we are live streaming on YouTube.
And I wouldn't say more exciting. I would just say additional things that are dominating his time these days.
So I could jump right in with the exciting updates, and then we can get to if more people trickle in, that's great. If not, I think we can still have a great conversation. So, I will get host in a second, I think, to have screen sharing. But the excitement is I can put the link into the chat. The NIH 3D Print Exchange has updated the prosthesis section, and it's all on the new software, and it's got the new header content with some images that Jeremy Simon put together, and the links are all now accurate. Oh yeah, and I can share it now. So I put the link in there, and if I share my screen, I can show this here. Can you see now the NIH 3D website there?
Very
awesome.
Handsome.
So this is Jeremy's design. I can't take credit. He wrote the copy and picked the image, and he did the photoshopping. It's great to have technical expertise on the leadership team. But this now is what we're trying. This has sort of been the idea for a year now, is to get this as the tip of the spear, as another entry point in to navigate all the resources of the hub and Thingiverse and everywhere else that hosts models and content, the YouTube videos for all these hands. So we had a Brandeis student from the Heller School, Nush, you may remember, work in the fall on a metadata schema for this site. And it's all been pushed, but it still has all the old content. So this content is 5 to 10-year-old models. And the next stage of the project is now going to be to build out these individual models with the content from the hub. So starting with the top 5 devices here. And so we've put a metadata schema together to hold all of the device ratings. We don't want to lose any work that's been done in the past. We just want to focus it to be able to have all of these links and stuff searchable and indexed somewhere super central that has a lot more eyes on it. And NIH 3D has all these other sections. So they also do molecular data. They did a lot of PPE, emergency response. There's lab tools on here. And my research interest is headed towards something like a global open source library of things and shape data. But e-NABLE has a section, and we could eventually change this to assistive devices or something like a level higher than e-NABLE. But this is really taking logic that's been on this site for like 5 to maybe almost 10 years and slowly updating it to be more useful to more people. So these links should all be the modern ways in. So you can see we have, I guess the image isn't linked here, but the hierarchy of how all the devices live today. The wiki.
Hang on, the wiki.
And we can update all of this. This is still just...
So just be aware that I think we've been off of Wikifactory.
Let me see. Maybe it's just the image got pushed and not the text. Let me see. I have a copy of what this is supposed to be. 1 second. But I saw we were waiting for a production update. And this is at least some of it. Let me see. Oh, yeah. The description hasn't been, but the image has been.
Okay. So let me just say that the family tree, the Google Plus group, the reference to Handomatic, and whatever you use to get to the wiki, those are all obsolete.
Yep. No, this has already been fixed. Jeremy sent me the update here. I've got it. Let me show you. I got a preview here.
Okay.
So I was hoping this was the whole thing. This is only part of the update that we were hoping for. But let me grab it. I can give you a preview. So this is what it's going to say.
Aha. Great.
So the hub, the device safety guidelines, and the e-NABLE Launchpad. Yeah, so Jeremy's on top of it. And I guess not the whole update has been pushed, but that means that maybe later in the week, this text will change over. We've been waiting for a couple weeks for their latest production of their latest website. So that should all move over. I got excited when I saw the hand, but I didn't actually test the links. And then our next stage of the project is zeroing out all of this content. And the new engine that all this is hosted in is super cool, what NIH 3D has built. So it's got in the visualizer here, we can click 3D and we can actually manipulate parts in the browser plugin, which is super cool. And I think one of the most powerful things.
Are you
we can
showing us something now?
Oh, sorry, am I not showing this? If it's not caught up,
All I'm seeing is the ping.
let me try again to this screen.
Jason, you'll notice my main function is to be confused, but it's helpful. You should feel free to jump in also.
So can you see me rotating the object here?
Not yet. It says, there you go.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So you can rotate the 3D objects. Pretty cool browser side integration. And if I click download, it can convert from almost any 3D type to any other 3D type based on the parameters you upload.
Wow.
So the file conversion is built into the website. So there's a lot more technology that the NIH 3D development team has put in from what was previously here. And what you're also not seeing is there's a lot more metadata. So this is just ported over from the old system. So it's moved over a couple fields, but there's several dozen more data types. So if I sign in, give me a second here. If I sign in and create a new object, there's a lot more that you can work with. So let me get over to prosthesis here. So let's share this again. And so if we go in here, we can go to the submission dashboard. Where do I do this? Submit a model. You can go through and we've got the prosthesis and assistive devices updated here, which means that is coming to production. Cool. So this is going to be the title section. We really want it to be a little broader than just e-NABLE. And so we could drop in our model and then it will guide us through a whole process with a lot more metadata. I think I do have to put something in here. Let me see if I can grab. This is not a model, a hand model, but it is a proprietary 3D shape that we own. So I can put it up here. This is for an open source 3D scanning platform for archaeologists. Also. So someday we would love to put more lab equipment like this.
You bet.
Model is ready to submit. But there should
You know,
be...
we have used a turntable. We haven't had something like this, but we've done a plaster cast of a hand, which is not hard, and of course produces a beautifully detailed cast, and then putting that on a turntable and scanning.
Oh yeah,
Nice methodological package for you to surface.
So that's definitely something I'd love to do more with assistive devices. It's not just the device, it's the methodology to produce the device. And if we can get not just like workflow guides and tutorials, but also like some open source hardware to get us there faster.
I agree.
We've solved a lot of these problems for material culture and ancient objects. We work a lot with Bronze Age pottery, but it'd be super cool to then use these plaster cast techniques to get better fit and function than just a couple of measurements that a lot of the configurators use.
Right.
I think there's a lot of possibility to use it as a subtraction and cut it out of the shape.
I agree. Just because I'm potentially a link maker, let me point out to you that Adam Jennings is doing more and more effective outreach to various professional prosthetic, PT, and OT practitioners and organizations. And it's becoming clear that in the last 10 years, there's a new generation of prosthetists. They're all interested now, actively interested, not skeptics about 3D printers anymore, but they're still sort of struggling to master the technology. And we see an opportunity for them to now begin working with our 3D proficient volunteers whose prowess as clinicians, of course, and follow through is not what we would like it to be.
Yep.
So I really think it would be great for you and Adam to spend some time doing show and tell with each other.
Definitely.
And think about that linkage, because the 3D file exchange would be a great credibility builder
Yep.
for the relationship building that he's doing.
Totally. And we can really try to surface those top methodologies, top models, top open source resources. We can float that to the top now. So the whole goal is to have this sort of like surface the best stuff and now keep it more active, which brings me to Jason. So Jason is a student at Brandeis who's majoring in health social policy, HSSP. I forget what that major is called exactly, but it's like sort of, it's both like pre-med facing, but also social policy facing.
Great.
And Jason has a
specifically
great...
the tech piece. It's health. So it's health, science, society, and policy. So the tech piece, yeah.
And Jason took my 3D printer class at the business school this semester and crushed it. It like really can operate a printer very well, but is also interested in the lab science, the data, what comes out of it.
Wonkery and geekery.
And I think he would be like an ideal person to help us build out the best models, the best techniques on the top of this site.
Well, that's just great. And Jason, I want to urge you to be in on that conversation with Adam, because Adam is addressing the real policy roadblock we've had, which is the gap to the existing medical industrial complex. So Ian can do it, or I can just write an email, or you can just write Adam, but your interests and your expertise puts you in a really strategic position at this particular moment.
So this is exciting. Jason has some time this summer, and we want to onboard him, kind of go over the stuff. Jason, we should have you assemble a hand too. I think it helps if you can look at a couple of the different things out there and see, it's like really understand the challenges, but really then like curate the data section of the NIH site to link to more of the hub resources that are amazing and vast and difficult to onboard, and even more difficult when you're trying to look for a specific thing and navigate to it. It's all there. It's just how do we get it into the hands of more people and make it easier.
And Jason, what year are you?
I'm a third year, so junior.
Cool. So next year you'll be at Brandeis again, but you're working. And so what is your summer looking like?
So I'm going to be a sailing instructor over the summer in mid-June. So probably the earlier I could hop on this project, the better. But I'm relatively free.
Sure. And where are you going to be lucky enough to be a sailing instructor? My sister is here. We have a little bit of history from 40 years ago along those lines also.
It's in upstate New York at a camp called Adirondack Camp on Lake George.
Interesting. Okay. And where are you from?
I'm from Chicago. That's where I am right now.
Chicago. Okay. So I'm in between Chicago and Lake George in Rochester, New York. And I like your expertise and your values. You've got a good profile. Well, you have a profile I can relate to. So I'm pleased to meet you.
I'm so glad to make this connection. And I think this is exactly the type of projects that we're trying to encourage, is like be a matchmaker, bring people that are interested, can also help with your career.
Agreed.
So Jason, I'll work with you to get you some of these resources, and we can get you some prints. If you don't have access to your machine, we can run some stuff for you. And we'll sprint for this. Like we can even get started before June to get it moving.
Awesome.
And the other exciting thing happening at Brandeis, which there is a bunch of other e-NABLE folks I need to talk to about, is we are starting our engineering major, and we're building this new classroom. And so we're an R1 research university with a liberal arts college with no engineering in the middle. The makerspace teams have supported traditionally engineering tools across the disciplines, and really are like exploding areas are humanities, classics, anthropology, fine arts, who really want to take advantage and use a traditionally engineering tool in a new context to unlock a new possibility. And I think the Brandeis flavor of engineering is always going to be multidisciplinary. It's an undergraduate major. It's going to be ABET certified, but doesn't have a concentration. The idea is you could take the PE and the FE, but not with a particular slant. But everyone's going to have to go through that liberal arts experience. So when we were looking at challenges we could do in our first class that'll run this fall on Intro to Design Methods, we wanted something that contributed to the world and solved real problems, but that also is practical and we could do in a design teaching CAD and CAM kind of space. The idea is that this class is an intro to design methods, particularly on drawing things on a computer and producing them in reality, that will be used for the next 12 classes in the major. So we're going to start this fall with using the e-NABLE prostheses as the foundation of the class, as a lens through which to teach CAD and CAM. And in the future, I think that CAD class, it might stay with e-NABLE. It might do more assistive tech or something else. It's going to be under the umbrella of design to repair the world. So we're headed in this direction. It could eventually be water systems or refugee crisis or some of the other stuff that John's working on about environmental protection and just data of environment systems that could be really interesting. But we're going to start with design in the global context. This idea that like for designing things, you never start from a blank sheet of paper anymore, right? You're redesigning the wheel, you look at 1,000 wheels and take the best. And Jason, we haven't talked exactly about this, but my other hope is that this NIH 3D section with the prostheses will also help that class a lot, getting started to navigate what designs they want to use. We're going to flip it. We're going to start teaching CAM first and then teach CAD. But we'll teach the limits and tolerances of the machine and the material through producing open source designs. And then we'll get a customer profile with a unique physiology, unique occupational therapy tasks that they'll then adapt those open designs to solve. But for me, it's always difficult to learn a design tool if you don't know the constraints. Like first we lay out the constraints and then you can design around them. And in the future, John, we'd love to talk about more assistive tech. We're going to learn a lot about we're building a classroom for this. So we're going to learn a lot about the limits of what we have available. But then we can go on to these more interesting problems or broad impact. It's not just a one vertical. I think this is like a way into designing in a way that's participating with the rest of the world and solving real problems. And I thought this might be a good bridge too to talk about your other projects that are sort of in the same open source, data-driven, assistive tech and more.
Well, I agree. I've been restraining myself because I wanted you to get real traction on what you're on the NIH and the e-NABLE project. I see that that's happening, but I also see that you've now got an institutional thing going on at Brandeis. So I now, or as soon as you're ready, would like to expand the conversation. We've got a number of things going on now, and you and Brandeis might turn out to be really good strategic partners, but I've got to expand the scope of what we both know about.
Yep. And there's some themes here running across all of this. This is like the global open source library. Our prosthesis club is getting more interested. We had a big burst of energy at the beginning. The founder, Liz, who you've met, really unlocked a lot of this for our community. Made between 10 and 20 hands for actual kids that needed hands. And then she went off to do graduate school in prostheses and is now on the more on Adam Jennings' side of the house.
Yeah.
Super cool to see that. But these clubs go in dynasties, and there's been less interest, particularly over a pandemic when people weren't in the rooms at the same level.
Right.
So we haven't done a client since probably 2019, just when shutdown happened. But now I've got a whole list of people to reach out to that want to reboot that for the fall. So my hope is that this class will also get people interested, and that can be a thing that starts to run itself again. And as we get that stable, I'd love to reach more out into environmental impact. some of these like citizen science projects, data driven, but also working on the metadata for this NIH site has got us thinking a lot about data lifecycle of all types and how we do discovery of 3D shape data of lots of types.
Totally. Well, okay, you have the floor and this is your meeting, but let me know how you think we can go forward and expand this discussion. I need to tell you that I'm working on a grant right now, deadline in 9 days, for the USDA has $1 billion it wants to put out for urban forestry.
Mm.
And so the Eco Restoration Alliance and the Open Impact Foundation are writing a grant to do the kind of thing you're talking about in a particular framework. Obviously, urban forestry is a subset of eco-restoration, but that's the piece that is just filling my head right this minute. The particular model we have in mind is that to try to help young people, whether they're in universities or not, but as you may recall, I started with a vision of doing this in universities, the Miyawaki Multiversity scheme that I'm sure I put in front of you previously. The current evolution is to say we want to be creating forests in America's cities. This is the grant story. In such a way that every forest also spawns a young practitioner evangelist who understands why it's so important and knows how to offer it in other places as well. The knows why it's so important and offer it other places as well has to do with the recognition that healthy ecosystems, not just planting trees, are what maintain the planet's air conditioning system and provide immediate benefits to wherever they are in the form of cooling, in the form of flood prevention, in the form of reconnecting people with nature, in the form of restoring biodiversity. It is a healthy ecosystem uniquely that does all of those things. And there are new technologies, some of them also ancient technologies, that can grow ecosystems 10 times faster than simply planting a species or a tree.
Yep.
Right? If you create a healthy ecosystem in an area as small as a tennis court, you get 10 times the growth and support 30 times the biodiversity. And if you do it in the communitarian learning way that we're talking about, you also start creating the culture that is going to be needed to save the planet. That's our pitch to the Forestry Service right now.
That's
I see
really cool.
Jason sort of nodding his head saying, I understand this kind of thing. Right this minute, the reason I'm right this minute is that I'm trying to put together a few pilot partners that can model the kind of relationship we have in mind in order to get the USDA support for the pilots and the platform, which will then allow us to clone the pilots and offer the platform all over the country. So on the chance that now that I understand who you guys are and what you're doing more generally, I do want to just sort of describe the model I'm hoping to put together in Rochester, because I would love to have one in Boston or at Brandeis. In Rochester, I have a group in mind. They haven't committed to any of this, but it's a model, right? A group that has some land to be restored. It's the Genesee Valley, no, it's the Genesee Land Trust. There is a national network of land trusts. So if we can get it to work with one and show that it works, we can then offer this to all of the land trusts. They also have, a Teens for the Earth program where they pay kids to do the kind of work that the Citizen Conservation Corps did back in the day. And so we want to teach them about the regenerative techniques that we're talking about. And what I would like to do is take that existing team and register them with the modern descendant of the Citizens Climate Corps, which exists. It's called the Corps Network. And there are 140 corps around the country that are doing this kind of wonderful work. And so my hope is that by creating a corps, we will have established a relationship with the Corps Network by proving that our platform can help guide and structure the Corps and help them share knowledge and achievements with other such groups.
Yep.
We can take that pilot and then use it to replicate across other corps as well as other land partners.
I'd love the community engagement aspect too, because it's not just the techniques and the model. It's like how you make this sustainable and prove that like someone will keep doing it
to grow exponentially in society the way healthy ecosystems, given half a chance, will grow exponentially on the land made available to them.
Yep.
And there is that metaphorical connection that you're getting, which is that you need a healthy social ecosystem in order to develop the mutual synergies that allow for this exponential growth. Okay, that's our model, what I'm trying to do. Now Brandeis has got, well, so this could go lots of ways. One question is, are you connected with a workforce development group in the Boston area? Or is, let's face it, Brandeis University, in a sense, a workforce development organization that's training potentially future practitioners? Do you have a patch of land that has too much grass that Brandeis could help make available for this kind of a project? And if so, you would become really good anchor partners and conceivably be able to write a letter of support in the next 10 days saying, we get this. We're already doing things like this. This would be a natural for our new program. And we would like to be a part of it because we're already doing what you all are trying to do, because our program is in fact already based on a cornerstone of the whole e-NABLE network that is the inspiration for this very thing. Okay, that's my pitch to you. Do we have an immediate opportunity?
I think I need to introduce you to a couple folks on email today and see if we can get a meeting in the next week or so. I'm thinking about particularly a biology professor who does some citizen science work here, our head of sustainability, who is always pursuing, this has been the year of climate at Brandeis. That's been the theme for our Festival of the Arts and a lot of our public programming. So I'll make that intro today, see if we can get a meeting in the next week to have that conversation.
Okay.
And I also think this
that completely, the next week is almost too late unless it's the beginning of the next week, meaning in the next few days. But I think you get it. And I agree that I think you personally and Brandeis in particular could be a really great partner for this kind of thing.
Absolutely. And it's also, I think it ties in e-NABLE education. This is the right place to be having this conversation, because it's how do we use stuff like e-NABLE in the curriculum, in the research pathway to train people stuff. It's almost like these are elements of like this, real world problems we can solve with STEM programs.
And there is no more concrete version of repair the world than eco-restoration.
Yep. No, and I think there's lots of ways in. I could introduce you to some of the stakeholders and see what we can do.
Okay. So I'm going to send you our current 2-pager.
Cool.
Okay, so
I'll use that in the intro. That's great.
And There's nothing more timely from my point of view than that right now. But why don't we make sure that I haven't derailed your conversation about the NIH file exchange?
This is actually perfect though, because it's part of the continuum that all this work exists on. And it's good for
Right.
Jason to hear about like how we think about this.
Great.
So I'm interested, we met NIH through molecules. First, it was like methodology for taking data sets from the protein data bank and then rendering those so they can be made in plastic, which today is like a 5-10 minute tutorial. It's not that bad. But 6 years ago, 8 years ago, it was like a pretty high barrier. And like the software couldn't handle a lot of those data sets. The software has gotten better. The techniques have gotten better. Our mesh handling tools have gotten so much better. And the slicers can now handle the more high polygon models.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting way to think about this. Like, how do we, and I like my also like secret part here is I work in a library, so we care about data and thinking about books and data sets and material culture and how those are all in a continuum of knowledge transfer.
Okay.
And the methodologies are important too. So going from molecules, the prosthesis was sort of our next thing. And our bridge there was PPE manufacturing also during COVID, where we had been making the hands for clients and we saw the impact. For us, it was like social impact of 3D printing. How can we use our resource in a way that we're not just making like tchotchkes for like Mother's Day and Father's Day, which are great, but also like don't have that same social impact. It's not community driven. And for me, the magic wasn't just like stewarding the resource, making sure we're doing something useful. It's the power that someone who makes something for someone else feels from it. Like the impact of the recipient, I think, is obvious.
That's
But
right.
the impact to the maker, like we heard from a great local makerspace coordinator who said, it was Christy Urbano, who said, empowered makers make makers. And there's no more empowering thing than making something that actually helps someone else and then seeing them make it. People get hooked on this, on the technology and its power.
That's right.
So e-NABLE was one of the first things that we saw that we were like, wow, this is not just like a useless like plastic thing that's going to end up in a landfill. We can actually make an impact with this.
Right.
And then I like that now you're headed on to the Eco Restoration Alliance, which also feels like in the 3D printing space, we think about where our parts come from and where our parts go. And the net impact of the industry on the environment is a huge topic right now, both from like the electricity we're using down to where the machines come from to where the plastic goes after we make things, that whole product life cycle. So we do think a lot about environmental impact, product life cycle analysis, and even with the e-NABLE hands, like those are also like not the longest term devices, right? If we're making them for kids too, I mean, the design principle is maybe it gets used for a year and then we make another one. And what happens after that year of use? And then the other side of this is what we started with for me, like the far end of the continuum now is shapes that are too hard to draw, that we have to use 3D scanning for. And that sort of comes back around to like fittage and function, but also like adapting things to the environment. And we approached that through material culture. Can also use these machines to look at ancient objects and do analysis of objects as text. Think about like, how do we design better, whatever, we have to look at everything that's out there. But also, I liked what you said about like the ancient insights. It's like seeing things from thousands of years ago that might be useful today. And the 3D shape data then is creating like huge problems in all maker spaces. For us in particular, it's as students get better at scanning, now we have hundreds of people creating thousands of scans a year. What happens to all that data? And like, do we keep just recreating it? Or can we put it in a repository, have it searchable and sortable for people in the future?
So this is great, Ian. I want to pick up on a few themes. So you talked about the benefit. Let me just name them so I don't forget them. One has to do with the benefit to the maker story. And the other has to do with the CAD 3D stuff that you were just talking about.
Yep.
And a third has to do with, I knew I couldn't keep it all in my head. So maybe it'll come back. Okay, so the first one I named was, the benefit to the maker. I'm wondering, Jason or Ian, whether you're getting, whether this resonates with you, but I was inspired to take this particular approach in part because more and more I'm hearing about kids who are despairing about the climate and biodiversity crisis. And it seems to me we have a duel going on between two self-fulfilling prophecies. One is the reaction that if we're Jason's age, are inheriting a fucked up planet. We can't do anything about it. It sucks. I'm going back to my video game, or whatever the hell you do when you're alienated, demotivated, anxious for good reasons, and easily distractible by the shiny things that civilization puts in front of us. That is a self-fulfilling prophecy. The other self-fulfilling prophecy is, holy shit, it falls to our generation to become the superheroes, which is an e-NABLE theme, and the saviors of the era, the species, and the planet. And the tools are miraculously available through the internet, another e-NABLE theme. We can do this, according to emerging science. If only we got our act together, we can do it and be the catalysts and the change agents. But we have to act quickly. But this comes at just the right point, because I'm trying to figure out what to do with my life and what could be more important than that. That is a self-fulfilling prophecy also. I'm rooting for the latter one, but we're going to have to figure out how to engage Jason and his buddies in a way that gives them the power, gives them the tools, and say, sorry about the predicament we've handed you, but we also have some other epoch-making things that our generation has put on the table for you. Networks and AI and information and knowledge sharing and the ability to collaborate with groups all over the world. So you can see it's many of the things that made e-NABLE exciting, but 3D printed prosthetics and upper limb needs is a niche problem. This is the mother of all non-niche problems. And frankly, it has an urgency to it that that trumps everything else. Okay, so that was one theme I wanted to connect, sensitize you to also. Oh, I remember the third theme. And amazingly, I lost it again, but it'll come back. I'm having trouble keeping this one in my head long enough, but it's important. The second theme is we have some new partners called United Design International. They're an international landscape design firm that is very much aligned with this kind of thing. They've developed landscape design modeling software, and they offer courses. But frankly, they're offering courses because they can't get enough sophisticated landscape designers who can understand the science and the practice. That may create an opportunity for a place like Brandeis, because, you know, in this case, you're talking about relatively sophisticated and well-educated practitioners who, however, really get it and understand the holistic vision. So if there's someone for them to talk to, I will connect you to this wonderful ally of mine named Verushka Kierkegaard in Norway, who is very keen on what's going on. Related to this, so let me just pause on that. Could you see modeling and landscape design as a piece of with sophisticated modeling software as fitting into some aspects of what you're talking about?
I think we could. I think soon. I don't know if that's one we can jump on immediately, but I'd love to understand more.
Okay.
I think immediately I have to introduce you to the people that work on sustainability on our campus and the
Well,
people that research biology and do citizen science projects on our
Yeah.
campus.
Great.
And partially what we're trying to do here is as we build an engineering program, it has to be Brandesian. It can't be like every other engineering program. Like otherwise, like we're not trying to copy something else. We're trying to figure out the multidisciplinary, like kind of core Brandeis founding cultural version of engineering. And I think what you're talking about is definitely part of that.
It is. I had
but it's
never
gonna take
heard
us a
that
few
word
years
before,
to-
but I'm with you. We are talking about Brandesian stuff here. And by the way, if you ask me, this is the way not only to learn about sustainability, but this is the way to really learn about cross-disciplinary biology,
Yeah.
climate, earth science, and social science. You can argue that the whole meta crisis is because those are usually treated as 4 different fingers instead of one integrated hand.
Mhm.
And the reason I am particularly enthusiastic about planting ecosystems is because once you understand what's involved in planting an ecosystem, not just a tree, and getting a community to do it, you've got the integrated vision. So I gave you a link here.
What is this?
Oh, well, I
What
made
is this link?
but it's not working. I beg your pardon because
.com. Yeah, I just put a .com and it worked.
Really? Okay. .net is meant to work.
Oh, sorry, .net.
It's probably the same place. Let me share my screen and I'll just give you a guided tour
Yeah, tell us what this is.
because I can already tell this is right up your alley. And while I didn't know anything about GIS a year ago, I'm the architect and the implementer of this damn thing, but I need help. So here I am sharing my screen, going to bigmap2savethefuture.net. And here you go. This is the Tikkun Olam notion right here.
Yep.
The notion is if we're going, in order to save this planet, we're going to need to engage almost everyone, almost everywhere. These pins represent people and places that are doing it. So by the way, this particular list is members of the Eco Restoration Alliance. But Chandra, for example, is doing great work in India. And as you can see, when you click on this thing, you find your way to his particular project. And there's always a button that says, go to the source to learn more. So we have a collection of ERA members, the Global Earth Repair Hall of Fame. We have a number of things that we've pulled in off of the web. And I'll just pick one at random so you can see here. All right, so there are projects like this all over the world, but we need them covering the map. As you can see, there are pins all over the world, but when you zoom in, these are small patches on a very big planet. Here are the United Designer entries. If I can, here you go, the United Design.
Is this all hosted on Esri servers somewhere?
It is.
Cool.
For $100 a year.
Wow.
As a nonprofit. And so here you go. You can see that this is an example of the design work they do. And in this case, if we click the link, we will go to the people I was telling you about.
Cool.
United Designers. And this is the kind of thing they do. And included here are their services. And And for that matter, it could be that we should get them to offer one of their courses in Brandeis, because they do great work.
I'm really interested in your Esri integration here. That is a super cool, like the content is amazing, but also the implementation is amazing. And that's one of those, like the method that you use to stand up this Esri resource is something that like all these impact, like e-NABLE. I know there's a little bit of a map interface, but this is like really cool GIS
Well,
data.
it is. In fact, in e-NABLE, I've always wanted to put all of the stories, all the e-NABLE success stories on this kind of a
Yeah,
map.
that would be
That's
so
what
cool.
inspired this, but I haven't done it. But I do have now a whole infrastructure that could easily do it. And so, you know, Ian, another project, which
We got to get you an intern or two.
well, that's right. About 5 years ago, when there was a lot of e-NABLE activity on the web, I think I found about 2,000 e-NABLE anecdotes, and I can dig up that whole file.
So you've got the source data for this.
I have 2,000, right? Since then, there are probably another 5,000. This is the closest we've ever come, and maybe the closest we ever get to actually being able to document our impact and do it in a way that
Let's find you, Jason. I don't know if you're interested in GIS. We have a big GIS engine here. Let's talk about this summer and fall. I would love to find, I know I can find a couple students that would think that's a really cool project.
so let me say, ArcGIS, as you know, is a whole complicated thing. I happen to be using their Experience Builder product.
Yep.
Which is sort of a no-code design kind of a thing. I'm also a Python programmer, so I've written the scripts that massage the data and upload it to this platform.
Yep.
If you like this particular interface, which is the one I thought we needed, and I'm glad that it resonates with you, it would not be at all hard to get me to do a seminar or two to train people about how to use this particular workflow. If there's a chance I can get some help, and you might, for example, then use it to say, great, let's take a step forward on e-NABLE's other Achilles heel, which is that people say, so how many cases have you done?
Yeah, totally. It's the
And
storytelling.
I say, you know, 5 years ago, there were 2,000 success stories. We've never been able to motivate people to get on to share
that's
their
another data. So the original two problems I thought Brandeis could help e-NABLE with, apart from being a chapter that makes hands, which is great, but to leverage that impact to the next level. One was navigating the complexity of designs available. I think there are other engineering schools that can do testing and break fix and all that stuff. I think we're really good at information design. So this is where the NIH part came from that we could contribute. The other thing I thought we could contribute to was onboarding new users. And these are big problems that anyone watching this later, there's a lot of stuff you can contribute to e-NABLE beyond making hands. So we made it a couple, and it's sort of like has its own challenges, but then we were thinking of like, how do we get more people? How do we use this as a lever for change? The maps is one I hadn't ever thought about. Like, that's so cool. It's like, it's a storytelling part, but it's very data driven.
That's right. And you'll notice there's a button up at the top that says nominate new entries, because the point is we were trying to motivate people to say, this is cool, I should be here too. And that's true for everyone with a 3D printer, but it's especially true with everyone who walks the earth.
Yeah.
Because where their feet are touching the ground, there's work to be done. And
it's so funny. And Esri is such a great data visualization tool.
Right.
And more is another one of these core competencies that like anyone in entrepreneurship should, like, there's something you can use it for. And we think about it mainly in these like data analysis things, but really like you're using it as a storytelling and a connection. It's like a network building tool.
That's right. So listen, for this purpose, because I really need to get, it's a little crazy for me to be the software developer.
Yeah.
Right. If I could give a seminar or a workshop or something, it will protect us against my time limitations.
Yeah.
It might well allow us to share the knowledge and recruit some collaborators.
Yep.
And then cloning it for other purposes is remarkably trivial.
I love this. I want to also now connect you to 2 GIS professors that I think
Okay.
would think this is cool and are graduating like 100 students a year who have the skills to help.
I wonder, Ian, whether it's time. So I'm happy to do it. I'm just wondering whether a visit to Brandeis
Yeah,
would be timely at this point.
we'd love to have you out here. We should find a way to get you. And plus Northeastern, I think, is your other big hub locally. Like
Indeed.
we know the folks over there, they're great. Might be time to bring you out to Boston.
I think it probably is under this expanded
Yep.
repair the earth info social development.
Last thing, I have to run in just a minute, but the
Okay.
last topic that sort of knits this all together with Esri is the other big sort of multidisciplinary design project that we're having trouble with are field notes, archaeology databases. We run all these field projects that collect data, and it's everything from the GIS location, the XRF spectroscopy of the thing you found, the 3D scan data of the thing, the petrography if it's pottery.
And you're not
if
currently
we-
putting it on a map? I mean, those are all
So-
situated things.
And that's important, but it's also a database of all of the information that you could ever do research on related to it. And there's no single, Esri has a product that's pretty good at this, but it doesn't quite integrate with quite enough, and it's a little higher barrier. If this was 20 years ago, we'd be using FileMaker Pro. Because nothing
Oh.
works great today, everyone's using Google Sheets and Google Forms, and there's a better way. So this is also a data management. It's metadata schema. It's the same there. We create so much complexity in research.
Yeah.
How do we make it so we're not redoing it every time we have to look at it, and we can keep building and doing more on the foundational work that people did last
Okay.
year?
So, I've kludged this together, but in a not embarrassing way. It's not well documented. It should be. And once it is, it's trivial to clone it.
Yeah.
Clone it, you would take my Python scripts, which are already well packaged in Jupyter Lab.
Yeah.
I
Love
use
Jupyter notebooks.
the Jupyter desktop app, which is a really good way of saying you don't have to install all of those things on your own computer. Here's the package that will run on your computer. You take those, you would copy a spreadsheet, because I am using Google Spreadsheet to broker multiple workers at the same time, right? So I just, but I've also created a user interface for editing, WYSIWYG editing of entries.
Yeah, cool.
And then a script that uploads it to Esri, where it then ties into their system. So at your earliest convenience, you and Jason and anyone else would be the perfect audience for me to just do a data dump.
Yep.
Because
Totally.
I see that it is timely and useful to you, and getting it out of my head would be very helpful also.
Okay, so we've got 2 follow-ups. Short term this week, we got to introduce you to some sustainability citizen science folks. Summer term, like in the next couple of months, I'd love to get working on this map problem. As we get the 3D print, Jason's going to help us with the 3D print exchange. We're going to get NIH's content really fresh. And then I think the next project is figuring out this map thing that we can leverage in a bunch of different directions.
Okay. And so that's great.
And let's
Okay.
find a
Oh,
time you can visit. And for any other schools watching in the Boston area, let's maybe do something while John is here. That'd be super fun.
Well, as you know, for e-NABLE, Safe Savage is now well embedded at Northeastern.
Yep.
You should know that the the forestry creation technique, the Miyawaki forest, is the co-founder of the Eco Restoration Alliance is Biodiversity for a Livable Climate.
Cool.
And they have done 2 Miyawaki forests and
Oh, wow.
are actually writing their own grant to do more along these lines. We've sort of split and we're pursuing both of these grants, this grant in parallel, and they're working on a regional scale, I'm working on a national scale. So that would be a really good thing to try to put together.
Yeah.
Ian, I've given you the dump.
Yes.
This is all.
I'm going to
quite
follow up on what I
time-wasting,
can, and
my
then
head
we'll
is
talk more.
exploding. Move on. Jason, good to meet you. If you'd like to have a call to discuss this also, I'm at your service.
And Jason, I'm so glad that you were able to come and hear sort of how this fits into an institutional context, to a broader landscape of open source design, repair the world type stuff. I think I'm really excited for stuff we can concretely pick up and knock down quickly, and then for the next steps that leads us to.
Okay, to be continued.
Great
I'm gonna
conversation
send you
today.
my backgrounder. Jason, give me your email. I'm going to CC you. You've
Sure.
been politely quiet, which is not such a great idea. And by CCing you, I'm inviting you to stir the pot also.
I just messaged it to you.
I don't see it yet. There it is. Okay, Jason Tothi, is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Thanks for what you're doing with the NIH, Ian, and the time has come to expand our collaboration.
Yes. Excellent. We'll follow up, and Jason, I'll talk with you in the next couple of days. John will also talk in the next couple of days, and we'll do all these fun projects.
Good. Bye, guys.
Have a great day.
Thank